All right. Well, I think what we'll do is just go ahead and get started, and I will be talking through some of the intro stuff. And then once we get the ability to share slides, Lawrence, if you want to just interrupt me, and I'll start sharing. But I don't want to go too late on our start time. So my name is Candyce Edelen, and I am the CEO of PropelGrowth. I'm really happy to be here with you. Thanks for joining the session. We are going to talk today about how to get more traction out of your LinkedIn posts and how to drive then leads as a consequence of what you're posting. So that's going to be the whole focus for this session. What I really want to help you do is think through the strategy to make sure that the right target audience is seeing and engaging with your posts, and that your salespeople are then able to turn those engagers into sales opportunities. So my background, I'm a co-founder of a couple of fintech companies, and that was from about 2000, I'm sorry, until about 2007, I co-founded two fintech companies, and then I launched PropelGrowth in 2007, helping technology companies with their marketing and sales. In 2018, I made a decision to switch out of the financial industry and move more toward working with a different target audience. And at that point, I didn't have any leads, I didn't have a network, I didn't have an existing thought leadership platform or anything that I could use for inbound leads. So I had to go outbound, and I started using LinkedIn really heavily. I had been using LinkedIn since it really launched, but that was when I started using it for prospecting and getting really serious about evaluating how my activity on LinkedIn was working. So I'm going to be kind of sharing with you how all of that came about. Darcy, I see your message. I still have like kind of a little black, it's like grayed out with a line through it for sharing my screen. Laurence, I don't know if you can share your screen. If you can, you could just pull up my deck.
No, I wish I could share, but it's the same for me.
Okay. Really apologize, guys. This is a new platform for us, and so we've got a few learning curves. This did not happen during the 2 rehearsal sessions we ran. So while we're talking and waiting for this to start working, I would love to have you answer a poll that we put up in terms of whether your team is posting content or if it's all, relying on the marketing department. So there's a poll there. I'd also love to hear you chat, just kind of talk about how you've been going about sharing content. I think it's helpful for us to think through that. And then I can go ahead and dig into some of the stuff from my article or from my presentation where we don't really need slides. So my goal for this session is really to answer a lot of really common questions that I hear over and over about posting. What should I post? What format should I use? How often should I be posting? What time of day and what day of the week should I post? What kind of KPI should I be tracking? How do I get the right people to engage with my posts? And then how do I turn that engagement into leads? So that's what we're really going to be addressing. And then the first question that I wanted to cover is, should I be posting to my company page, or should I go with my personal profile or ask the team to post from personal profiles? So this is tricky because I know that as marketers, we need to build our brand, but we also need to try to drive engagement. So it's kind of a both in terms of the question of where to post. But when you're trying to drive engagement, people connect with people. And you can't really connect easily with people on your company page because that's dependent on people choosing to follow. And some of that will be organic based on what you're posting. You can also send invitations to the connections of any administrator on the page to try to invite people to follow your page. And then you can, of course, sponsor posts, and that will bring more followers. But you really can't engage with them beyond that. Where on a personal profile, you can engage more organically, you can invite people to connect with you, you can send them messages from your personal profile. So what I recommend is that you use the company page for branded content. That's where you can be a little bit more promotional also. And use people's personal profiles for posting engaging content where you really want to engage with leads. And that way it gives you kind of a both and, so that you're covering both bases, but you're not being too salesy on the personal profiles where you're really trying to drive engagement.
So Candice, I'm able
Yes.
to share my screen.
Okay, then would you go ahead and pull up the deck and display?
Yeah. 6. Decide what you should post. That
Yes.
okay, good. Here we go.
Thank you. See, this is why Laurence is on here as my awesome facilitator. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Okay, so if you want to go to the next slide, let's talk about what we should be posting. So, and also I want to encourage you in the Q&A, if you want to share your questions, I will address those as we go. So that slide that Laurence was just displaying is kind of like a little break, and there's a whole bunch of those breaks in this presentation where I can actually answer your questions in context. So put them in the Q&A, it'll make it easier for us to find them, but I will answer them as we go. Okay, so what should I post? First of all, I want to talk about the difference between native content and non-native, because native generally outperforms non-native. However, this is not a hard and fast rule. It's not 100%. But what I would recommend is that you think about native content primarily keeps people on the LinkedIn platform. So by native, I mean that you've posted in the text post, or you've uploaded a video, or you've uploaded an image, and it's not a link that's taking them off site to your blog, for example. That's considered native. Non-native is where you're sharing a link and you're posting to promote that link with the goal of taking them off of LinkedIn to your blog. We all need a mix of that because you need to build a subscriber base to your blog. But if your goal is to get more views on LinkedIn, native generally works better for that. And then you've got a lot of different content types: text, images, video, polls, carousels. The carousel is also where you can upload PDFs, articles, and stories. When you upload things, I want you to be thinking about mobile first, because a lot of the people coming to LinkedIn are joining via their mobile phones. So if your content is like an 8.5 by 11 PDF, you can't like actually stretch content or zoom in on it in a lot of things in LinkedIn, especially images. So understand that if you post something that's too small to be read on mobile, they're just going to scroll past because they can't engage with your content there. So just be careful about what you're doing and think mobile first. Also, an interesting stat that I just came across on Monday is that 70% of video views on LinkedIn are done with the sound turned off. So when you post videos, make sure you get subtitles in there, because LinkedIn doesn't have the capability like YouTube does of automatic closed captioning. So take the time to put subtitles on your videos so that people like me, I almost never turn on the sound, can still engage with your video. Salesy content generally does not perform very well on LinkedIn. You can do it a little bit on your company page, but don't expect a lot of engagement from that. However, all of this is test it. See what your audience is engaging with. And remember that it's about what your audience thinks is cool, not what your team thinks is cool. So really test this and watch what kind of engagement you're getting. Okay, next slide. So in terms of the types of content to post, there's 3 types of content that are working really well on LinkedIn right now. One is stories. You can tell personal stories. I don't know if you follow me on LinkedIn, but recently I posted a story about how I lost my cell phone, and a whole bunch of really kind people helped me recover my cell phone. That did quite well. Now, that's not going to get me anywhere in terms of promoting my business, but it does show a human side, and so personal stories can help do that. The other thing is client success stories. Now, if you're going to name your client, of course, get their permission. And when you talk about client success stories. Make sure that you make the client the hero, not you, and definitely not your product. But client success stories can do really well. And then another thing is facilitating an unbiased debate. I have found polls to work really well for this, where I don't take a position so much, but I try to ask a question that I know people are going to have pretty strong opinions about that is not political. Like I asked a question about whether people think that, I don't know if you know that posts are gradually lengthening. So you may have access to this now, or it may not be there for you yet. It used to be that posts were limited to 1,300 characters, and now some people can go do up to 2,993 characters. Where they came up with that number, I don't know. But I asked in a poll, like, what do you think is better? And that actually got a lot of engagement. Be careful not to take a position too early if you're going to try to facilitate debate, because that could shut down discussion. Then another thing is to dispel a myth. You can connect myths to your area of expertise. You can correct common mistakes or common objections even that you get into this in the sales process, like Mac was just talking about. Think about addressing those objections right here so that more and more people see it. And that can really build an audience of people who view you or the person who's posting, if you're facilitating this type of content for your team, that creates that thought leadership position. Okay, next slide. So if there are any questions, I don't see any yet, so I'm going to keep going. But again, at these breaks is where we can address some questions. So let's go into what formats that we want to use. When you do a post and you click that start a post, you're going to get the options to create a photo, video, event, or write an article. And then once you're inside the post, all of these different icons down below show up for adding a photo, adding a video, adding a document. That's what I mean about native content, when you add the photo as opposed to sharing a link. And again, if you're going to add a document, you can add PDFs there, but make them mobile friendly. Okay, next slide. Articles. So articles used to perform exceptionally well on LinkedIn. I published a number of articles and got quite a bit of readership, but not only readership, I got engagement and I got leads out of it. However, that is not working the same way today that it was working before. Sorry, I'm just plugging in power for my computer. So I tested this and I published an article recently. And you can see here, if you'll click, Laurent, we'll get some circles showing up. I got 7 likes and 4 comments, but only 21 views of that article. In contrast, I published this almost exactly the same content. I just shortened it to fit in the post. I got fewer engagements in terms of likes and comments, but way more views. So my solution now is to do posts instead of articles, and I would strongly encourage you to do that. Maybe articles will come back, but right now LinkedIn really isn't promoting them. So next slide. I just got to fix something here. Whoops, sorry guys. Okay, so polls. So they work and they're a lot of fun, and sometimes they work exceptionally well. Like this one, if you notice, go ahead and keep clicking, Laurence. You'll see that I got 380 votes on that poll, 18 comments, or I'm sorry, 18 reactions, but 108 comments. It created a lot of engagement, a lot of debate. This is what I mean about, fostering an interesting debate, and 21,000 views. So this is why so many people are posting polls right now. But if you'll click again, Laurence, I posted another one, and this one was more specific to a sales objective that I had, but I got a lot less engagement on this one. So don't assume that you're going to get a ton of engagement on polls. However, the second one worked better for me because I was able to go to the 5, 10, 1, and 1 to 5, and the zeros, and have conversations with them about whether or not they wanted to learn how to get better results from getting meetings with cold leads. So, you really got to think strategically about your posting and what kinds of engagement would allow you to actually build a relationship and start a conversation with a lead. Okay. So we did get a question. Do people read the long posts from company pages or only from personal? Wow, that's a really good question that I have not tested. 5 follow me on LinkedIn, send me a connection request and ask that question on LinkedIn. I will test that, and I would love for other people to test it too, and let's just analyze that. But I don't know. I would assume that you're going to get significantly better following if you're posting on your personal profiles, but it's worth testing. Okay, go on. We're going to talk about how often to post. So one of the biggest things to think about is that this is not Twitter, it's not Instagram. The algorithm works very differently. So we want to make sure that we don't treat the system that way. Go to the next slide. I don't recommend that you post more than once or twice a day, because if you do, you end up cannibalizing your own posts. And I'm going to show you on that next slide what I mean by that. It's important to keep a regular and consistent cadence as you're posting, and consistency and just building up that frequency of posting is going to help to build an audience over time. But in this slide, this shows a post that I put up. And if you look at those 3 sharp spikes at the very beginning, that's the first 3 hours that that post was live. And if you look at the kind of dull green, you can see that the number of views spiked right within that first 3 hours, and then it pretty much leveled off, and I didn't get a lot more views, even though there was some more engagement in the post. If I had posted something else in those 3 hours, I would have cannibalized that traffic, because LinkedIn would have been confused about which of my posts is more important. So you want to give a post some time to breathe, and understand that the first 3 hours, if you can maximize engagement during those first 2 to 3 hours, it used to be the first hour, that's actually just recently changed. The first 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours is where you're going to see the most traction from that post. Okay, next slide. So it looks like we've got another question. Does joining various groups? Yes, and I'm actually going to show the impact of joining groups in terms of the size of my audience. So we'll get to that. So let's go to the next slide in terms of what time to post. I've got 2 different ways for you to look at posting times. I would encourage you to take a screenshot of this slide, because it will give you kind of the times of day to post. And then I'm going to show you another slide in a second that will give you more of a heat map. But basically, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are the best times to post. And I would recommend around 9 a.m. on Thursdays, for example, and 8 to 10 a.m. and then again at noon on Wednesday. So if you'll show the next slide, you'll see a heat map that Sprout Social created. That's what's justifying the way I built that chart on the previous slide. So the darkest area on this slide is the highest engagement. This is in the time zone of your target audience. So always be thinking about this. If you're in Australia and you're targeting a US audience, you want to be focused on US time zone. If you're in the US and targeting the UK, same thing, focus on the UK time zone. Okay, next slide. I did an analysis of inbound messages that I received in LinkedIn, and I looked at 11,000 inbound messages. So this is people sending things to me. And what I found was that it was pretty evenly spread out on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, with Thursday being slightly better, Monday and Friday being a little less, and then Saturday outperforming Sunday. What's interesting to me is when I've sent messages on weekends, it's quite easy to book meetings on weekends. So don't assume that you shouldn't engage on weekends, just expect that the engagement will be lower. Next slide. This is where I broke it down by the time of day that those messages came in. So 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. So that's my time zone. If you are targeting an East Coast audience, then that's 1 p.m. their time that I'm seeing the most engagement. Most of my audience is not in my time zone. I think they're primarily Central and Eastern. So if you just kind of slide that back and say, okay, noon and 1 are probably my peak times, that's when you're going to probably see the most traction on LinkedIn. Okay, next slide. What types of KPIs? In the chat, I'd love to hear you guys talk about what kinds of KPIs you're tracking, but I'll show you what I track. Go ahead. So when I look at engagement, I'm looking at the number of people who are reacting, because when they do a reaction, that sends it out into their feed. How many people are commenting? LinkedIn really values comments, and the number of views. So the number of views is basically an accounting of how many people did LinkedIn display my post to. So for me to maximize the algorithm, I know that clicks, dwell time is how long they hover over your post to read both your post or watch your video and look at the comments on your post. So that total time is dwell time, and that's a very, very important indicator for the algorithm that people are interested in your content. And if they think that people are interested in your content, then they're going to push it out to a broader audience. Then the reactions and the comments also push it out into the feeds of the people that are reacting and commenting. So it becomes both an organic and an algorithmic push. So you can see how that's that poll that I was showing you earlier, how that performed, and those comments really helped drive that. But so did the fact that people were clicking to vote on the poll. Next slide. So this is a slide that shows the way my engagement has grown year over year. So the light blue line is last year, and the dark blue line is this year, same period of time. And what you're looking at here, if you notice that the number of comments and the number of engagement that I've been getting has grown, and the number of views has grown almost really well matched to that. So that's where we can evaluate that comments are more important than reactions. So in the upper right-hand quadrant, you see the likes or the reactions. And that has had some impact, but I don't have as much of a growth on that as I have on the comments. So the dwell time is not something that is exposed, Stephanie. It's just you have to think about the way that you're creating the content to encourage dwell time. It's one of the reasons that videos are doing so well, is because people actually sit on the video and watch it for a while, and that increases their dwell time. Okay, next slide. All right, now this is an impact of comments on my views. So here I have sorted my views of different posts based on the number of comments. That top one there is that poll that did so well. But you'll notice that it's not a direct relationship between comments and views, but there is a relationship in terms of how many more views I get with more comments. Now, if you show the next slide, this one I sorted based on reactions. And you can see that reactions are also driving the number of views. And then if we look at the next slide, I reversed the sort on this. So it's, can you go to the next slide? Here I've reversed the sort, so 0 reactions. Look how few views I get with 0 reactions and 0 comments. This is why you really want to kind of track that KPI, because if nobody's engaging with your content, nobody's going to see your content. Okay, next slide. All right, so how do I get the right people to engage with me? Let's see, Marie, it looks like Marie asked, how are these KPIs or metrics that contribute? How are these numbers? Okay, I'm going to talk about that right now in terms of how we get those numbers to generate leads. And in terms of the tracking tool that I'm using shieldapp.ai. It's, I think, about $25 a month for a single user to be able to track kind of this type of engagement. Okay, so then shieldapp.ai, that's right, Marie. And if you can put that in Q&A, that's what I'm monitoring. It's a little easier for me to see questions in one place rather than going back and forth. I just want to give you guys a heads up if I miss you. Okay, so let's talk about how to get people engaged.
There's
So
also a question about the dwell time. Stephanie asked, where do you find your dwell time?
And I don't have an answer for that. I think, like I'd said a little bit ago, it's really more about the post itself. Videos will tell you that someone viewed only if they've viewed the video for at least 3 seconds. But other stuff, you can't really evaluate dwell time, but you can evaluate that if somebody has commented, they've probably looked at some of the comments. And if they've clicked more, that click is a good indicator for LinkedIn. And if they click more, it means they're interested in reading that post. And so your dwell time will lengthen from them clicking more to read the post. One important thing around that is that if you do a regular text post, you have 5 lines of viewable content. If you add a video or an image, you have 3 lines. So maximize the use of those lines. It's kind of that idea of being above the fold. Maximize that space so that you can encourage people to engage and click. Okay, next question. Or next slide, sorry. I'm just double checking. So it looks like we've got 15 minutes to go. I want to make sure I end on time. Okay, so in terms of getting the right people to engage, and this is really important in terms of Marie's question for converting leads into opportunities, the first degree network of the person posting has a huge impact on who's going to see the content, and then the type of content that you're posting also has a huge impact on that. So you want to be selective about who you connect with. Don't be one of those open networkers who just accepts every connection request. Grow those connections over time, but the size of your first degree network does matter. If you'll click again, I'll show you that. There we go. So this is my network. I have 3,117 connections. That gives me access in second degree to over 2 million connections. Group members, there was the question about joining various groups. That gives me access to 690,000 other people. And then my third degree connections, which I can send connection requests to because I'm using Sales Navigator, that it really extends the audience that I can reach. So grow your first degree connections, but grow it strategically. Next slide. Okay, so this is kind of a chart of how my connection basis has grown over time. And one of the things that you want to be careful about is don't send too many connection requests to people that aren't responding to them, because LinkedIn has just initiated in the last month a strategy where they are blocking you or putting you in LinkedIn jail, as I like to call it, if you send more than 100 connection requests in a week. So you want to grow your connections organically and gradually rather than trying to build it all at once. Next slide. The next thing is to write specific audience content that's targeted to your specific audience, that is intentionally designed to drive engagement. Because if you can drive engagement with your target audience, then the second degree connections who see that content because your first degree is engaging with it, you'll be able to build your audience more with those second degree that are also within your target audience. Vanity metrics, the number of views and things like that, is not really the goal. It's more about who's engaging with your content rather than just a count. So the next thing that you also want to do is make sure that your profile is optimized to maximize the impact of those views. So what happens a lot of times is people will see your content in the feed and they'll click over to your profile to check out who you are. First thing they're going to look at is your headline. So you want to make sure that your headline is really well optimized for your target audience and how you help them. Then the next thing is to make sure that your profile summary is optimized to make sure that they understand the value proposition that you can offer them if they connect with you. When you're on LinkedIn, unless you're job hunting, your profile is not your resume, and do not treat it as such, because it's you'll shoot yourself in the foot. I've seen salespeople that have like on their profile all of their amazing sales results and how many times they've gotten into President's Club, and you know how they pursue prospects relentlessly until they say yes. That's actually going to really hurt them in terms of getting prospects to engage and trust them. So think about your profile from your customer's point of view and make sure that it is really articulating a value proposition, but not just for the brand, for the individual owner of that profile. So it needs to focus on the value that that individual brings to customers in alignment with how your brand brings value. Okay, next slide. Now, when you're thinking about engagement, remember we talked about dwell time being most important. So your engagement, your number one first goal should be to stop the scroll. I love this image because you do want to click and say, what's he going to say about these plates? Okay. So you want people to pause, and that's what some images can do. Although honestly, I get really good traction just out of text posts too, because there's so many image posts that sometimes text posts do stand out in the feed. The next thing is that you want them to click see more, not click through to get to your blog, but click see more or respond to a poll or click to go through the carousel of content that you've shared or click play to watch the video. Those clicks are being logged by the algorithm, and that's a very important indicator of interest. And then the next thing we've already talked about a lot is the comments. So next slide. In terms of how I evaluate the performance of an individual post, go ahead to the next slide. And if anybody's got questions, go ahead and throw them up. When I am looking at a post like this, I'm looking at the fact that it got those views. So I know that it got pushed out into my audience. I'm also looking at who's commented on it and who's liked it. So those are usually the indicators that I'm tracking as my first level KPIs about whether a post got interest or not. And then I'm evaluating, okay, this type of post didn't get interest, this type did. So go to the next. We just talked about that. Keep going. Okay, so when I click on the likes, I can actually see the individual people who have reacted to my post. And I've had really good luck personally with reaching out to individuals who engaged with the post and start a conversation with them on just in the LinkedIn Messenger. So I'll say, hey, thanks for engaging with the post. That actually helps kind of push it out there. I'd love to get acquainted with you. I'll go look at their profile and find some reason to engage. I did that with Jim Parker there. He's somebody that I've been connected with for a long time, but haven't actually been all that in touch with him over the last few years. Well, he's just recently taken over alliances at this company, and he's going to actually put a bunch of people through my masterclass. So it was a really good reason to connect, and I was looking at it just to really reconnect with him, but it ended up being a great sales call too. Next slide. The other thing that you can see on your posts, if you click, can you go 2 slides up again, Laurence? Up. One more? Oh, let's see, go down. There, oh, I don't know where it is. Okay, go back up. Okay, when you go down one. Okay, when you click, oh shoot, this is, okay, I'm gonna just tell you the slide number. Hang on a second. Can you go back to slide 34? Sorry, everybody.
Which one? 34?
34, yeah.
Okay, here we go.
In terms of the possible ways of getting traction from the LinkedIn groups, I will address that. That's a really good question, so I will come back to that. Okay, so if you see the little, go ahead and click a couple of times. Okay, the second click, you see the, nope, back up. Okay, you see the little graph there next to the views. If you click that little graph, now click twice, Laurence. That's going to bring up this information. And this is showing me what companies are engaging with my post. And these are the views, not just the people who liked it or engaged. So I can see at least a slight overview. This is obviously not all of the companies who viewed my post because there were over 1,200 views. and it's not all of the people who viewed my post. But if I'm hitting the right companies and the right target audience here, it gives me a sense of being able to evaluate whether my post got to the right audience. Okay, next. On videos, you get more analytic information. And also on the company page, when you post on the company page, you're going to get a little bit more insight into who's viewed your posts. In this case, this is a video that I posted. This is a highly promotional video because I'm promoting the accelerator that I'm about to launch for driving prospecting or driving leads on LinkedIn. And here you can see how many people have viewed the video for at least 3 seconds. So that has more meaning than just somebody scrolling by your post in LinkedIn. And then it shows me the reactions. And if you click again, you can click the audience tab right there and click again. And then that'll give you information. Unfortunately, they don't show you what companies engaged with your views. So I don't know why they don't display that, but at least you can see if you're getting to the right profiles. Okay, next slide. So in terms of Jeffrey Porter's question, optimizing the company and the team members' pages are both really important. Because if you think about the customer journey, if they see content in their feed that's engaging and interesting to them, one of the first things they're going to do is click to see the profile of the person who shared it. If that profile gives enough of a value proposition to say, huh, that's interesting, I wonder what this company is, then they're going to scroll down to where the person works and they're going to click the link in that job. So one of the things you got to make sure is that the person who's sharing the content is actually connected to the company page as the employer, so that when you click that, it goes to the company page. Then your company page does really, really need to be optimized, because that about section on that company page and the content that you're sharing is what's going to cause the lead to do the next step, which would be to click to visit your website. So make sure that the website link is easy to access, both on the personal profile page and on the company page. Because if they can't easily access your website, they're not going to spend a lot of time on it and they're just going to disappear. So I'm really glad that you asked that question, Jeffrey. Thank you. Okay, let's talk about how I turned those engagements into leads. Go ahead to the next slide. So in this situation, I had a bunch of reactions and I looked at them, and this Kevin was somebody who he had responded to before we got, and so I sent him a connection request from that. And we were able to actually book a meeting. I just met with him yesterday. We're doing some joint venture stuff. He's going to probably take my master class to it. We're going to be doing some joint events. So that was meeting, and all it took was he engaged content. I sent him a connection request, and then when he connected, I sent him a message asking if he'd like to get connected, and really relevant to his profile and to the content that we had both engaged in. Okay, next slide. Here's another example where I was doing a webinar last week with Adam, who I believe is in this group. And this lady, Aviva, had reached out to me, or actually, I'm sorry, Aviva shared the event. So I thanked her for sharing it and helping spread the word in a connection request. And then when she responded and accepted my connection request, I sent her a message saying, hey, thanks for connecting. Would you want to get acquainted? She said yes. I sent her my Calendly link. We got acquainted a couple of weeks ago, and she's already signed up for my masterclass. So that's how you turn engagements into business. Okay, next slide. So if you want more information about how I'm doing this stuff, go ahead to the next slide. I have had ridiculously good results with prospecting on LinkedIn, just very organically, engaging with other people's posts, commenting and liking on their posts, as well as then sending them connection requests, getting the connection, engaging with that connection, and then asking them for a meeting. I started this process in 2018, and over the first 6 months that I was doing it, even with the experimenting and figuring out how to do it, all organic, not using bots, not using any outsourced service. I highly, highly discourage you from trying any of those, because they can really blow up in your face. But spending about 5 to 8 hours a week, I was able to get 500 new connections, 355 of them engaged with me on LinkedIn. I booked 125 sales calls with cold leads in 6 months by myself while running my whole business. And 27 of those qualified as opportunities. I couldn't even like follow up with all of them because I got so busy. We sold about $438,000 worth of business off of that 6 months of engagement. And I had to stop following up on sales leads because I was so swamped with delivering, because we're a 2-person company. So when we sell something, we also have to deliver it. So next slide. If you're interested, you can get free training from my website on how to do what I just described. It's a 45-minute webinar that walks you through it. Also, Adam Shapiro and I just did a webinar, and you can jump on that too. And so you can work on optimizing your profile, send connection requests, book meetings. That's going to cover all of that. Next slide. If you like that, you can also enroll in a masterclass. Now, there is a masterclass link. Actually, if you use the coupon code BBC, and I'm going to send out a link in a couple of minutes, or Laurence, if you've got that handy, if you could just post the link so that they can get to that. I'm offering anybody in this group a 20% discount off of the masterclass if you sign up between now and July 3rd. So the coupon code is BBC if you get to my checkout page. If you're having trouble finding this stuff, reach out to me on LinkedIn, send me a connection request, tell me that you saw this show, and we'll make sure that you get this information. There, Laurence just put that that post up there, so, or the chat with the coupon. So if you click that link, it'll take you right there, and it'll just automatically apply the 20% discount. Next slide. The other thing I'm launching is an accelerator. So if you are in sales, or if you've got a salesperson on your team that really needs to kickstart that pipeline to hit your year-end goals, we're doing a 12-week program that starts on July 7th, where I'm going to work with a small cohort of about 10, maybe 15 people. We're going to create a personalized 90-day action plan for you that's really, really specific to your pipeline goals, your sales goals. We'll have weekly training. We'll be working on this stuff just in a Zoom call where we'll be looking at your profile, helping you optimize your company page, your profile page, optimize the way you're sending connection requests, help you book 125 meetings or however many meetings you want, and I'll mentor you. So that's the link for the accelerator. And you can go to learning.propelgrowth.com to learn more about both of those. Okay, I think there was some, thanks for your comments about my stats. It was crazy. I had so much fun with that. The possible ways to get leads and traction out of LinkedIn groups. I have experimented with this in different ways. And one of the things that you want to be really careful about is that you don't promote and be super self-promotional. Engage in the groups by asking questions, answering questions, commenting on people's posts. But look for groups where engagement is happening. A lot of the groups, LinkedIn has just destroyed this because they allowed automation to post. And so it becomes like this place where blog posts go to die. So be really selective about what groups you engage in. If you do find a group that's super engaged, and I think actually some of the ERP groups do engage a lot, there you'll be able to share insight, and you can also connect with the group members and do the same thing that I'm talking about sending them a connection request and booking a meeting. If you want to know more about that, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I would love to chat with you. I'd love to be connected, and I am out of time. Thanks so much, you guys, for all of the engagement, for the questions. Please do reach out to me. I'd love to talk with you, and I'll be back in a couple of hours to facilitate a panel on how to use advertising to drive traction and leads to your website. See you then. And right now we're going on break, I think, right, Laurence?
There's another
Okay.
session starting in 15 minutes.
Right, so we've got 2 panel sessions starting in 15 minutes that are going to be fantastic panels. So please join us there. And in the meantime, if you have a chance, you can go to the networking tab or the expo tab. Just don't click the back button and don't click the hop in icon, because those are going to take you out of the event. Have a good one, guys.